one of the bigger question marks about Kamala Harris, which is, will she maintain the disposition of the Biden administration's assault on corporate power, or will she slide back into a more neoliberal stance? We will see. And how much does Tim Walz's pick give us any indication? But it is fascinating, I mean, to see the range of Republicans and former Republicans and people trying to appeal to Republicans, how upset they are about Kamala Harris's pick. They all had their own favorite, who I'm sure they would have voted for in that instance. But here is the pick that Kamala Harris did pick. And I got a bunch of texts in the wake of this speech where people were getting a little, dewy-eyed. And, I think exuberance is warranted sometimes. And I actually found this speech pretty impressive, too. I mean, this combination of Harris not sliding into the tendency that we've seen from Democratic politicians in the past in purposefully or, agitating the more progressive part of the Democratic coalition or ignoring them. And
the great historian Greg Grandin, who we've had on this program, tweeted out, Bill Clinton would have picked Shapiro just to establish dominance over the base organizations as he did with NAFTA. There'll be many betrayals to come, but for now, let's bask in the Walz farmer labor smile.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And certainly I think, Obama had a tendency to do the same. And, remember, Rahm Emanuel was the guy who said, F the professional left. And they specifically tried to disempower progressive groups when they got the nomination. It's a different era, and that's worth celebrating. Do Harris and Walz have deficiencies? Of course. But things tend to be graded on a curve. But this was an impressive speech. And the other part that I found also really impressive, Tim Walz is not a laugh riot, but he is funny, and he is not afraid to make a joke. And there were shades of a guy who realized, Barack Obama at one point during his campaign said, that he had respect for Ronald Reagan or something to that effect. And it was sort of unclear what it was that he was referencing. And some said, this notion of positivity. And there is a quality to the Harris campaign. We won't go back. That attempts to sort of say we can move into the future. And Walz, even more explicitly, has that sort of happy warrior quality about him. Play this clip.
So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope.
Pause it for a second. Now, this was, we should say, this was in the wake of him talking about how long it took for him and his wife to get pregnant. They used IVF. And so he was talking about how this was important to him. Some people also suggested maybe, I don't know how the timing works out, but hope was also a big theme of one of our last, Barack Obama. But go ahead.
When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. And for our children to be free to go to school without worrying they'll be shot dead in their classrooms. By the way, as you heard, I was one of the best shots in Congress, but in Minnesota, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in common sense gun violence laws. Vice President Harris' idea of freedom is a ticket for education to be that ticket to the middle class, not crippling debt. Air that's clean, water that's pure, communities that are safe. A place where we settle our political differences not through violence, but with our votes. And that's what this election's about. What direction will this country go in? He's not going back. Well, Donald Trump would damn sure take us backwards. Let's be clear about that. And don't believe him when he plays dumb. He knows exactly what Project 2025 will do to restrict our freedoms.
All right, that's good. And I mean, there's a quality of watching Walz where you sort of feel like, is this 1961 or something?
Is Hunter S. Thompson in the crowd?
There is. I mean, I've never heard the phrase common sense gun violence laws. I mean, it's just the language is ready-made for a Midwestern audience. And with the Rust Belt, it's going to be very important that at the very least, Harris has surrogates who can go in there. And this is a DEI pick, much like Joe Biden was a DEI pick. But this one was much more explicit, right? I mean, there was only white guys who are really in contention here. And the point is to give sort of some type of assurance to Midwestern voters in particular. You know, we're talking Michigan and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you call that really Midwestern, but I mean the sensibility, rural voters in some instances, and not all of them. Not even necessarily the majority of them, but enough of them so that Harris can win in those states. But he also, again, has incredibly, relatively speaking, has been incredibly successful in pushing progressive policies in a state that had a 1-vote margin in the state Senate. He is not afraid to be both aggressive and with a smile on his face when it comes to contesting Republicans. You heard him there that Donald Trump, for damn sure, knows what Project 2025 is. And here he is. This line really drove Republicans nuts. And it's one of those lines where if you don't know what he's talking about, you wouldn't be offended by it. But if you do know what he's talking about, you'd laugh. And Republicans are out there trying to criticize him for it. And it just makes them look weird because, well, here's the line. Play this clip.
Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale.
Pause it. He's talking about JD Vance, of course. All right, let's go back to the beginning.
Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, like all
now, if you don't know what that's about, the sort of internet meme that JD Vance had carnal relationship with a couch, you would just be like, oh, JD Vance is lazy or whatever it is.
Basically, somebody made up that he put that in his hillbillyology because nobody read it, and it sort of became a game of telephone beyond there. But it's sort of in the style of the make the SOB deny it, LBJ.
Exactly. And so you have a lot of Republicans out there going, oh, he's supposed to be Mr. Nice Guy Midwest, but there he is saying things about JD Vance's couch.
Saying we hump cushions over here.
All right. In a moment, we're going to be talking to David Dayen about Walz, about this big Google monopoly case, and the question of antitrust in a Harris-Walz administration. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.